Hello, welcome to a vlog. And in today's vlog, I just got done watching season 2 of Dark, which is, if you're not familiar with it, it is a kind of creepy, fascinating show on Netflix, German show that deals with time travel. And besides birds and dinosaurs, cryptozoology, I love time travel. At least time travel in the concept of a fictional plot device, or we're basically telling stories through time travel. Actual time travel with the physics around it, I'm not prepared at all to talk about that. But yeah, time travel in fiction. And in fiction, we get kind of, I think, three types of time travel, or how it's displayed in fiction. The first one, which would be mutable time travel. And what that means is that, let me use visual aids. Basically, that time is a straight line, and you can go from one point, travel back, and change things, and then from there on, you have a different future. This can be really horrible drawings. Bear with me. Good example of that would be is like the old going back in time to kill Hitler as a baby sort of thing. That you can travel back in time, kill baby Hitler, and stop World War II. But then your future is completely changed. Like there's only one timeline. A good example of that in fiction would be like Back to the Future. So everything in Back to the Future would be the example of mutable timelines. There's immutable timelines. And what that means is that you can't change the past. Like there's one timeline and you can't change it. Like if you went back to kill baby Hitler, either just the universe would prevent you from doing it, or like if you kill baby Hitler and then like baby Hans, the next crib over would become the new Hitler. And there's some variance in that kind of storytelling, in the sense that like maybe you can't change big events. Like big events are gonna happen, kind of sort of how they want to. The timeline's gonna rearrange. Maybe little things you can change. A good example of that would be like the Time Machine, at least the newer one, which is like 20 years old now. But the newer Time Machine, where he couldn't go back to change like his wife's death, which was the reason he made the Time Machine, but he could change little things in the timeline. So that's immutable timelines. And then the third thing is kind of like it's kind of the multiverse, or the multiple alternate history timelines. And that's that you have the one timeline, and if you go back and change, you can't go back and change your timeline, but you can make changes, which would make a new timeline while this timeline stays the same. So basically, every little change, like everything in life, like any decision, there's multiple timelines. So it's kind of like the multiverse, and you saw that most recently in Avengers Endgame, kind of like that. Yeah, so then there's a whole bunch of billion other like fictional theory of time travel. I mean, there's the theory of time travel in like Donnie Darko with pocket universes and things like that. Yeah, there's just a lot of different time travel vehicles. But what I want, oh gosh, I've already talked about 4 minutes of this. What I want to talk about today is Dinosaur Train. Yeah, if you're not familiar with Dinosaur Train, it's a show on PBS that basically has walking, talking dinosaurs that ride around in a train throughout the entire Mesozoic period. And there's like, I think I looked it up before we did this. There's like 100 episodes of that. Uh, Fair warning, right now, I have only seen a small fraction of those. So if I misrepresent Dinosaur Train in any which way, Dinosaur Train fans, I'm sorry. Please let me know. I will correct it. So yeah, back to the dinosaur, to the actual premise here. So, so here's the premise: is the Dinosaur Train is a physical train that runs through, that exists in the Mesozoic period, that utilizes tracks to get from here to here, like normal trains would work. But they also utilize these things called time tunnels. And these time tunnels not only transport the train from to different physical locations, but also different locations in time. So if you wanted to go back to the the Jurassic period, you could do that. Uh, and I'll try to explain it in paper form because I mean it's kind of fascinating. So let's talk about the Mesozoic era. That was the time of the dinosaurs. Basically, that's the good way to think about it. And so that was 65. Ended 65 million years ago. So the Mesozoic period is basically broken down into three different eras. There's the Triassic era, which was the longest time ago. Put a little T there. There is the Jurassic era. Oops. And there is the Cretaceous. All right, so this is going to show up backwards. I'm sorry, I'm not going to fix it. So we have these three periods, and obviously I laid them out like this for purposes of visuals, but obviously it's a normal timeline that runs back and forward. So the Dinosaur Train, basically, like our main characters, that's Tyrannosaurus and Pteranodons, live in the Cretaceous period. And so they can take this train, to different points in the timeline to visit other dinosaurs, and that's basically the whole premise. It's a kids show. It's about learning about dinosaurs, and that's how they do this. And they'll visit other dinosaurs in those periods. And what's fascinating to me is that when they go to these periods, time passes the same. If that makes sense. That's why I broke it down into three different ones here. So like, if you got on the train and you visited a point from the Cretaceous period and you visited a point in the Triassic, and you spent 2 days there, 2 days will pass there, and 2 days will pass in your present time. So when you came back, it'll be the same, that distance amount of time later. And I'm sure this is done just for the ease of storytelling and not really to think about it. I feel like a lot of the time travel mechanics in here is kind of hand wavy, but that's fine. I am adequately bored and crazy enough to talk about it. So, but what's interesting is that, like, in their present time, so let's say, they go to the same point in the Triassic 2 days later. When they go back to that point, 2 days have passed. So time is moving at the same pace throughout time, if I'm making sense here. And I think the best way, like either breaking down in threes or just think of it in actual physical travel. So if I travel to Japan, different time zones and everything, but it's physically, the time stays the same. It's 3 days there, 3 days here. I mean, it's constant. Excuse me. So that in itself is sort of fascinating. That's why I broke it down to the three periods. So basically, what this means is that they have this physical train that goes from places in time, physical places, different areas around the world, that goes physical places in time, but time remains constant. So no matter what, so even though you have these three periods, time is still moving in one direction no matter where you go. Uh, like I said, that in itself is super fascinating. Because so then what that means is like even with the concept of a time machine, you can't like live forever, or you can't have like you don't have an infinite bubble of time. It's always going to run out eventually. Uh, or is it? Because so here's the deal. In this show with 100 episodes, there are, I looked it up and I counted, I believe 80 different stations that they've gone to. And each of these stations represent a physical location in on the planet, but also in time. So you have all these points, and so ideally or perfectly, I'd have 80, for a timeline, I'd have 80 different lines here, 80 different points. And so what that means is like there is a station, they visit a Cryolophosaurus. A Cryolophosaurus is a large theropod predator from the Jurassic period that lives in Antarctica, but it lives in early Jurassic period, and they'll visit like an Allosaurus, which is also lives in the Jurassic, but lived much later in the Jurassic. Uh, there was about like 20 to 30 million years between these two. Like you have to remember, like this whole period is like 250 million years from the whole Mesozoic period. So even though it's the same period, there's some jump between there. And like I said, there's about 80 of these stations, which whatever falls in line with whatever dinosaur they want to talk about. So in theory, and I'd have to look at, what if they have dinosaurs in different places, but what if there's like, like I said, this is like 20 million years, but what if there's something like two little lines that's only like a fraction of that. So even something as small as like 20 years. That's where this gets interesting, where again, time passes the same where you go. But what if you traveled from that 20 year just to 20 years back? Couldn't you, in theory, and spend that 20 years in that, or you leave at any point from that? But you could always go back. What I'm getting at is like, at some point, you can't separate. You can't keep these separate. They're going to run into each other eventually. And that's where it gets fascinating for me, because then I do have to wonder is, going back to, I mentioned a little about like pocket universes. Could, in theory, you keep maybe not the entirety of sentient dinosaurs alive in a bubble, like consistently? Can you start the cycle over? Is what I'm getting at. Is there a bleed over point? Is there a point that you can travel back to, even though time travel is linear? Can you, in the dinosaur world, Dinosaur Train universe, can you exploit this time travel? Is it exploitable? Is it something that I'm surely the writers of the show have thought about that, because I don't see how you can't. And I feel like it's even they have kind of had hints at it. Like I believe I haven't seen the episode, but I was reading the wiki, is that there's actually a station or a tunnel that leads off, that's implied leads before the Mesozoic area into the Permian, and so that implies that these tunnels, like whatever superstructure or whatever creates them, exists beyond just this era. Yeah, so I didn't want to talk. I mean, it's already almost 15 minutes. I didn't want to really go into this when all I had to do is paperwork. And I'd much rather, and I'm gonna go full blown crazy. And I said, this is just a stupid kid show. I mean, obviously, this is nothing, but it's fun for me to think about, and I just feel like it's a fun narrative or world to play in with that the concept of travel. So I would like to revisit this, hopefully with better visual tools. Uh, but yeah, that is a brief overview of what did I call this? Time travel. God, this is frustrating. Time travel and the dinosaur train. All aboard. Thank you. I hope you guys have a great day. Dinosaur train, dinosaur train, dinosaur train. Gonna ride, 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 ride. The dinosaur train.